Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Chris Hill with my co-host, Sean Winter. Today on the show, we have Eric Cacciatore, who's the host of the wildly successful podcast, Restaurant Unstoppable. And he's here today to talk about his journey in building the podcast and what he's learned from interviewing nearly 400 chefs and industry professionals across all walks of life. But before that, Sean, how about a quick word from our sponsor?
That's right, Chris. So for anyone looking to pursue a career in the food industry, Le Cordon Bleu is the largest network of culinary and hospitality schools with more than 35 institutes in 20 countries around the world. Le Cordon Bleu not only offers you one of the most respected culinary qualifications in the industry, it also gives you a once-in-a-lifetime multicultural experience. Be part of a 120-year legacy. Join them for a lifelong journey on your pathway to culinary mastery. So you can apply at cordonbleu.edu. And with that, Chris, I'm excited to catch up with Eric. It's been a little while since I think we saw him at NRA show that we were all together, right?
That's right, Sean. That was a lot of fun. And I know you've been on his podcast. I've been on a couple times as well. And if you're not familiar with Eric's podcast, Restaurant Unstoppable, he calls it a melting pot of mentors. He's interviewed almost 400 professionals, sharing their stories of success, what they've learned along the way. And I'm excited to jump in as well. So what do you say we get into it?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Hey there, Eric. How's it going, buddy?
Great. How you guys doing? Is this enough energy for you, Sean? Am I doing a good job? Am I feeling unstoppable?
We're going to need you to dial it up a little bit more.
And no breaks in the action either, man. So thanks for joining us, Eric. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, connect with you. Sean and I both know you very well, but maybe you can inform the listeners a little bit about your backstory and how you've gotten to where you were with the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. You want the short version? I can make this into a long podcast if you want.
How about the medium-sized version?
Okay. So long story short, I was a commercial pilot, resigned from aviation when I was 26 years old, 4 years ago, and had grown up in the restaurant industry. And I knew that I wanted to work in restaurants, but I had created a situation for myself as a commercial pilot, going to school, getting $200,000 in debt that I could never pay off my school loan debt and live any type of reasonable lifestyle working in restaurants. So I won't lie, I was in a little bit of a depressed, lost state of my life. Really no idea like what I was going to do or how I was going to pull myself out of this hole I created. But I just started learning. I knew I needed to do something. I knew I wanted to do something with restaurants. I didn't know what. So I just started learning. I started listening to podcasts, really is what I started doing, like Smart Passive Income with Pat Flynn or Entrepreneur on Fire, Mixergy, and just was blown away at all these incredible people all over the world sharing their stories, sharing their advice, and just leaning on each other. And all these amazing people just serving other people, and just the idea of like sharing knowledge. And I don't know, like it blew my mind that there wasn't a podcast like that for the aspiring restaurant owner. And the restaurant industry kind of has like this reputation for holding their secrets close to their chest and being very guarded with their knowledge. I think that we as humanity, as just people, as humanity, we have an obligation to, we're all in debt to those who came before us. They gave us knowledge. Everything we have in this world is contributed to who came before us and what they've taught and passed on to the next generation. And we owe it to the next generation to share that knowledge. That's our one purpose in life, is to gather knowledge and leave this world better than the previous generation. So I wanted to create a platform where the best, most incredible restaurateurs, restaurant operators could come and just share their story, share what they know to be true about their success, and make the next generation better off. So that's kind of the fast forward version.
I could not agree with you more, Eric. Now, when you started out for your very first time, you had a really interesting story. I know you and I have talked about this before. Tell people what you actually did to get some of your first guests.
Oh man.
This is a true story of literally making something happen.
Yeah. So, when you first get started, nobody takes you seriously. You really got to do whatever it takes just to get yourself in front of the right people. And I was sending, I think 10 to 20 emails a day, maybe getting like 2% conversion rate on my emails, just trying to keep up, get guests on the show. So you got to get creative. I went out to, I don't know which story you're referencing, and I'm not even sure which one came first.
It was out to an event in the mountains.
So I went to the Chefs Collaborative event in Boulder, Colorado. And this is going back probably like 3 years ago. And I didn't have $1 to my name. You got to get creative. You got to do whatever you can. I had a friend who was a commercial pilot. He got me a buddy pass. I think I might have had $100 in the checking account. I traveled to like the other side of the country with basically a hammock on a backpack, and I rented a bicycle, rode my bike up into the mountains, and was staying in the mountains on my hammock just to go to this event where all these incredible chefs were, the Chefs Collaborative event in Boulder, I mentioned before. But Ari Weinswag was there, and like all these incredible, he was the reason why I wanted to go. I wanted to get in front of Ari Weinswag and get him on the show. But just networking, you got to put yourself with like right next to people. And you got to get creative. And as soon as you say it's not possible, your mind just shuts off. So you got to say, how is it possible? And then be willing to do those things and put yourself in awkward, crazy positions. But those stories, when people find out that you're out there and you're sleeping in the woods to like just be there, like that just blows people away. Like, and they want to help you. They want to contribute to what you're doing. So I feel like the more extreme you're willing to be, the more impact you're going to have, the more results you're going to have. And just never take no as an answer. Never say it's not possible, because it's always possible. It's just how. It's the question.
And Eric, what year did you start the podcast? And give us a little bit of the background with how it's evolved, how the listenership has grown over the years.
So I started in 2012, I believe. That was about 4 years ago. Wait, no, that's 5 years ago. So I started 2013. I started thinking about it in 2012. And I think I actually started recording. I'm going on 4 years. I can't do math. Yeah, like 2014, and January 2014, I think was when I started. And it started off as just me really just wanting to learn from successful restaurateurs. It's been a very transparent podcast from the very beginning. I think one of the reasons why it was successful is because I was telling the truth. Like, I was a student of the industry. I was literally, taking hospitality classes, and I just wanted to learn. So I just started as a student, and I was really I had no idea. I really didn't know much about the industry. I grew up working in it, but like I didn't know what made people successful. So I was just trying to learn, ask questions. And at first the show was more about the restaurant. Like, what is it about this restaurant that makes it successful? But after like 50 or 60 episodes, I quickly started to realize that it's not about the restaurant, it's about the people. And this is such a people industry. And behind every great restaurant's a great person. It's like one thing I've learned for sure. And so the show transitioned to focus more on the people behind the restaurant. So it's not about the restaurant, it's about the person, their journey, what they knew to be true about, how they see the world and their own success. So I think that's probably been the biggest transition in how the show's evolved, getting away from the restaurant and focusing more on the people, their values, their, I think I started really focusing on the story more too, like how they got to where they are, and just kind of pulling back layers as they came up, doing less research and kind of going into it, not knowing too much about the person, because you don't want to steer the conversation. You want it to be organic. You want them to talk about what they are comfortable talking about. So yeah, I'm jumping all over the place right now. I hope am I answering your question?
Yep.
Cool.
So Eric, when you started this, you were doing this on the side, right? This is kind of a passion project. So yeah. What was very difficult about growing this to where it became more of this full-time venture for you?
I think it's always a challenge. It's a struggle today, and up to this point, it's always a struggle, because you're always, I think Mario Andretti says it best. If you have control, you're not going fast enough. And I've always kind of pushed the envelope from the very beginning. Trying to do 3 episodes a week is like ridiculous. But I've done it, so it's not like it's not possible. So like, you can do it. When I was first getting started, I didn't always make that mark of 3 episodes a week. But now that I have sponsors, I really don't have a choice. I have to promote, or I have to put out 3 episodes a week because you get into those relationships. But, just always just kind of doing as much as you possibly can. And so, I started with just like you said, like doing it as a side hustle. And as soon as money starts coming in, you just slowly just start to pull your attention away from whatever your full-time job is, and you start cutting back. And it's kind of like a seesaw, like you just, as soon as you can put more work into your side hustle, you do. And that when you don't have money, all you can do is put in hours and, sweat and tears and blood, and you just keep, I don't know, taking a little bit out of your regular day, like your work day, and maybe it goes from 40 hours a week to 35 hours a week to 30 hours a week, and you just slowly transition to now where I'm full-time on the podcast, like 40 hours a week, and then whenever I can, I'm like driving Uber, I'm like, I'll literally take my car or my laptop, and I'll sit like in my car like between trips and like suck off of Wi-Fi and edit and like email and recruit guests, and it's tough. When you're trying to improve and you're still only one person, it's really frustrating when you know what can be, what can happen, but you're limited to what you can do physically yourself, because you want to do more, and you have to remember to stay focused on whatever that one thing it is that you do. I get distracted by shiny objects all the time. But you have to know what your niche is, know what your specialty is, and just do one thing really well, which is a lesson I learned from a lot of my chefs and restaurant owners. Like, find one thing that you do really well, own that one thing. Kind of like how a physician or a lawyer focuses on like one topic, like one piece of law, or like focuses on one type of medicine. I don't know, like focusing like different types of doctors there are and stuff. But you want to be a specialist, basically, is the point I'm trying to make. And my specialty is just the podcast. So instead of trying to break out and create courses or break out and try to, I don't know, any other types of channels or revenue you can create, like, you have to just be patient, I think, and just focus on that one thing until your cup overflows doing that one thing. And then when your cup starts to overflow, like, that's when you can redirect your attention to other projects. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of got creative there and started talking about growing and stuff. But,
no, you did. And you bring up a really good point. Someone had said to me once, it's a blessing and a curse when you're working for yourself, Sean. You'll find out that to be true, because you get to do, you get to do whatever you want to do. That's the blessing. The curse is you get to do whatever you want to do. That's a hard thing, because now it's I experience the same thing. What am I focusing on today? And then next thing you know, 4, 5, 6 ideas come up, and they're really good, and I start diverting my attention, and next thing you know, I haven't made a dent on the one thing that I intended to do today. So I completely understand.
Yeah, man. And you hit the nail on the head, where you get to wake up every morning and choose your own path and do things that matter to you. And I think the most important thing is to choose something that provides other rewards. If you're doing whatever it is you're doing solely for monetary purposes, you're going to burn out, because you're not going to make money right away. It doesn't happen right away. What you're doing, you're playing the long game. You're putting the time, the work, and the energy into what will be, 5-10 years from now. And if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? Everybody would be walking around rich millionaires, but it takes a lot of sacrifice, a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears early on. And I'm just starting to come out of that stage where it's becoming profitable. And, I'm getting by. But if it continues to grow 100% every year, which it has since I've started, that compounding effect, that really starts to make that means something at year 5 and 6, right? Years 1, 2, and 3, that compounding effect is not too big of a deal. But once you get into bigger numbers, like, then you can really start, what do they say? Like, live your life like no one else will, so you can live the rest of your life like no one else can.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm jumping all over the place. I had like 4 cups of coffee this morning, guys. I'm sorry.
Nice, man. I'm on number 2 right now. Now, Eric, everybody, I think, has a pretty understanding of who you are, your background, your mindset, and everything, which I think we all have a lot in common there. But you always start the show with an inspirational quote or success mantra from your guests. So how about you give us one for us today?
Yeah, there's just this saying that always, it's like a little mantra that like plays in the back of my head whenever I just feel like, I just don't want to do anything. I just say to myself, there ain't nothing to it but to do it, and just do the work. Honestly, just keep showing up and do the work, and over time it will pay off. And we put so much resistance towards just starting a project, whether that's editing or, researching a guest, and you just like, I'd rather just like veg out, but like just there ain't nothing to it but to do it. And once you start, it just, you waste so much energy just resisting it. Just do it already. Get it over with. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Like always be working on something and just do it. Pull a trigger and start, and it'll be easy. You'll be surprised to see how easy it is to pick up momentum.
Yeah, and on top of that, Eric, I'm finishing up this book right now. The easiest thing in the world to do is to procrastinate. Literally last night, Tina, my fiance, she's out of town for the weekend, and I am supposed to be writing and editing, and I turned Shark Tank on. And I'll watch half an episode. I'll watch one episode. And it's so easy to keep putting things off. And I think that's one of the things also with being your own boss is if you want things to get done, you better do it. And you have to, except for yourself. Have you faced challenges like that, along the way?
I mean, every day, man. Every day, you got to, reach down deep and find the willpower to just keep showing up, to keep working towards the goal. And, one thing that helps me, when I want to take a day off or when I've had enough is it's not about, I just remind myself that it's not about me. And it's about everyone else. And in this industry that, I'm serving these people, I feel like they're counting on me. And when you make it about other people, and serving other people, and you hold a certain level of accountability on yourself where like you don't want to be that person, like that integrity kicks in, so when you create things and you do things for others, I feel like it just helps you dig deep, and it helps you to find that will to show up when it's not for you, but it's for others. So I think, one way to make yourself successful is if you keep that in the back of your mind, that you're not showing up for yourself, because you'll quit on yourself, right? Like you'll give up, like we're the worst to ourselves, right? We abuse ourselves. But when it comes to other people and having that integrity and knowing that you made a promise and reminding yourself that that's why you're here, to serve this industry that you love, the people in this industry that you love, it really makes showing up much easier.
Well, that's the only way I was able to, finish writing, a 150-page book and, do the rehearsing, over and over again for a speech, whatever it might be, It's absolutely.
Yeah. And it's funny, like I'm going through something right now. I'm headed down to Florida in a couple of days. I'm driving down to Florida for my roommate's wedding. Both my roommates are getting married, and I got like $100 in my checking account right now, and I have sponsors. But it takes, and these are big companies. It takes time for the money to it takes like months for the money to move through sometimes. And they just move like snails. I don't know why, but anyway, and I had one issue with one of my podcasts. I lost the MP3 right after the recording. So I'm trying to get ahead and get all this content scheduled into the future. I've got content that's being erased, and then I had 2 people reschedule on me, right? And I was down. I was depressed. But then, I just reminded myself, I get these emails, like these random emails, like 2 emails a week of people who will write me and just say, thank you. They'll tell me just how grateful they are that I created the podcast, and how it's helped them and how their lives are different now. Cause it's been 4 years since I've started. So now like people who have been listening to the show in the beginning are starting to have results from actually listening to all these people who are sharing their stories of success and their advice. And the people that are taking the advice are starting to write to me saying, oh, like I have a job interview for Shake Shack next week. And I would have never I would have never pushed myself to have standards and to know to move on if I hit a ceiling where I was at. And somebody else will write me from like England and say, oh, like your show is inspiring me to, just keep going, to keep showing up. And when my partnerships aren't working, to know the right partners out there. But now I know to look for partners that have the same values and want to do the same thing. And like, that's what makes me show up. And then it's just like, it's worth it. When I want to quit and call it, a day and just stop, it's like, like this is serving people. It's helping people. And if you live, you just keep on showing up and you stay positive, like the world will provide means. So things will work out. As long as you stay positive, you'll attract onto yourself the means that, everything always just seems to work out. And I, just before this call, I got a message from somebody on LinkedIn saying, hey, just want to reach out to you. They're a hospitality consultant and they worked for Wolfgang Puck. And they're like, I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to spin anything. I just want to say hi and like welcome you to the community of like consultants or whatever. And you're doing great work. And instantly I'm like, there's my next guest. Like, I don't have content for next week. I'm going to Florida, you know, like there's my next guest. And I said, hey man, I just had one of my guests reschedule, and I have a spot. Can you record in the next 3 days? And they're like, you know, so the point being is just stay positive. Just do it for the right reasons. And it's the law of attraction. If you put positive energy out there and you live to serve, it seems like opportunities just fall in your lap like every day. But you just got to stay positive. You just got to keep your eye on whatever the mission is, aside from surviving and like feeding yourself, and just keep pushing forward. And there ain't nothing to it but to do it.
Now, Eric, keep me honest. I think you've had close to 400 guests on the podcast.
392.
Oh, I was way off. Sorry. with some of the most respected names in the industry. Can you share some of the lessons that you've learned from them along the way that have made you better as an individual and now as a business owner of your own venture?
Oh man, I've learned so much. And people ask me to like share like specific stories, and I'll be honest, it's really hard for me to get specific, but like the big overall arching lessons have been, one that's helped me is just know what you're good at and stay in your lane. And if you can just become really good at like one thing, like me, I know my strength is just being high energy and being positive and just like exciting other people. I'm an influencer, you know, I have the ability to influence and excite other people. And I'm very naturally curious. So like the podcast is a perfect lane for me, just being a student, never ending learning. And I feel like I'm really approachable and I'm non-threatening. So like I can just approach people, and I you know, have the bigger picture, the vision of like what I want to create. So I just stay in my lane and I focus on just the podcast. And that's why I think I'm the #1 restaurant podcast, because I don't allow myself to get distracted. I just focus on doing that one thing really well and putting all my eggs. And people say don't put all of your eggs into one basket, but I feel like sometimes that isn't a bad thing to do if you're good at it, you know? So yeah, just know your lane, stay in your lane, be a specialist in one thing. And the other big lesson is just, you know, surround yourself with incredible people. If, you know, it's all about the people. If you're know what you're good at, and then find other people, be so good at that one thing that you're good at that you attract onto yourself those who are good where you're weak. And a lot of people say bad things about partnerships. I think to really be something outstanding in this industry, the restaurant industry, you need partners, because to have an impact, to do it right, to be good across the board, and you need to be good at everything. To be good across the board, you need other people. You need people who are strong where you're weak. And I mean, the lesson that I've learned about finding partners is just having a very similar vision, goal, values, and really finding the right partner. And if you can answer this question, can I marry this person? Like could I marry this person? And the answer is yes, then that's your partner. You don't actually physically have to marry them, but like it's going to be a marriage. You need to be willing to spend the rest of your life with this person, because that's what it's going to take to be successful. So just having those spelled out values, those spelled out, you know, make sure you're all going in the same direction, and find something that's worth working towards. Make a mission that can get you out of bed. Like create a mission to serve that will get you out of bed every day, which is so important in this industry, because you can make good money, but there's going to be days where like you need something to get you out of bed other than the money, for sure. I'm just kind of spitting stuff off right now. I can keep going if you want me to.
Well, Eric, I want to say you brought up a really good point about, you said staying in your lane or find the one thing. But I also think sometimes when you look at a certain snapshot in time, it may appear that someone is putting all of their eggs in one basket, as you said, but in actuality, they're focusing on something as they should in that moment in time to build it up to be great before they start divesting their energy going into other things. So with you, I would say, I don't believe you're putting all of your eggs in one basket. I believe you're building something to be great before you begin diversifying. Because if we look back in 10 years, I doubt that you're just going to have a podcast, right? After you reach a certain threshold or a certain place, I think that there's going to be other things that come along, whether some people approach you, whether you decide to do something else in addition to it. But I think in the snapshot in time, it appears that way. So I think it's a lesson for people that in a snapshot in time, it's not a bad thing to really focus on one thing to build it up to be great.
Yeah, it's like that whole idea of just being a specialist and finding your niche, staying in your lane. And when you do that one thing really well, you're going to attract onto yourself other people who do other things really well. And you all just start, serving your singular purpose, but it leads to other opportunities. Instead of spreading yourself out and not really making an impact across the board, if you can make a massive impact doing one thing better than everybody else, then you're going to open up doors for sure.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, kind of along the same lines as what Sean just asked you. I know you've read a ton of books for the podcast, some from guests, some just from business and mindset type things. If you had to list 5 books and explain why you would pick each 5 books that you think could benefit and impact a chef, restaurateur's life the most that you've come across, what would those be?
The must reads, I think, for any restaurateur, I'm not going to say Danny Meyer's Setting the Table. I think that is a great book, but there's a lot of other great books out there. I think the ones that are must read for this industry are The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth, I can't remember the full title, but it's essentially the framework on how to build and systematize a business, which is crucial for any business: is systems, processes, procedures. That's one. The next one, well, I want to say definitely all of Daniel Goleman's work. I feel like social and emotional intelligence is way underplayed in this industry. And there's so much to learn about just mindfulness and, just that part of the brain that can override emotions and project into the future, the frontal lobe, and just how the brain works, really. Michael Goleman wrote 3 books that I recommend. Like I said, Social Intelligence, Emotional Intelligence, and Primal Leadership. And he really breaks down how the mind works. And I feel like once you know how your mind works, like once you know how your car works, like the engine of your car works, like you can fix it. Like if there's a problem, like you can recognize it and correct for it, right? When you know how your mind works, you can recognize that your mind's just playing tricks on you, and that it's just an emotion, or it's just like a limiting thought, and that you can override that. So when you get super angry or irritated or pissed off, like that's your primal mind, like just like hijacking your brain, your rational mind. So when you get emotional, you can literally stop the emotion in that moment and choose to be rational and just recognize that that's lost energy. It's not going to get you anywhere. So like once you know how your mind works and when you see things happening or you feel things happening in a moment, like you can make change. Or if you're just depressed or tired, like that like you just keep on showing up and just do the work. Create good habits. Like it's so important to know how the mind works, and also how the minds of other people work. And when you know how other people's minds are working, then you can start being very proactive to, it's all about people in this industry. You need to know how they work. And then the 5th book would be 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Just because this industry, any industry, it's all about just creating those good habits. And actually, I'm going to give you 6. Another book on the topic of habits is the Power of Habit. And if you can just create habits, I mean, what success is just showing up consistently, doing the same things over and over and over again. If you can make those same things into habit, then you don't have to work as hard. It's just you're on autopilot. It's the power of habit is so crucial. So all those go back into like how the mind works. So the E-Myth, just because you need to know how to systematize your business. And then after that, this industry is all about just how you interact with people and how you have discipline and how you treat yourself. And discipline is power. Discipline's freedom. So I'm jumping all over the place right now, guys. Way too much coffee.
I will say for the 7 habits of highly effective people, I think it's habit number 5, which is seek to understand before you're understood.
Yes.
Was a game changer for me, number 1. And then there was another part in his book. It was a quote from Viktor Frankl, and it says, between stimuli and response, there's a space. And in that space is our ability to choose our response. And in our response is our growth and our freedom. And it speaks to one's ability to be intentional with their responses when emotions are at play or stimuli comes into play. So whether it's a guest, whether it's a coworker, whether it's somebody that is rude to you, there's a fraction of a second for you to be able to choose your response. And what he posits is you can either be automatic with it and give in to your emotions and irrationalities, or you can be intentional. And Eric, I tell you what, when I read that book, it completely changed my life. Changed my life. So I'm with you there. I highly recommend that one too.
I agree. And it's just a practical example. So, I've been working with this food truck company and a kind of a consulting role. And every now and then I'll hop on the truck and work a shift. And I was actually on there. It was just me and the owner of the truck. And he's an older guy, but kind of spastic, and he's all over the place. And long story short, it starts to get kind of busy. And he's literally, pushing me out of the way and, yelling at me, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like starting to get kind of, tense inside, and, that reptilian brain of mine starting to go off. And then I say, wait a second, it's not personal. He's just trying to deal with it the best he can the same way I am. And an hour later, he was fine. We're joking around, having a beer together. So knowing that it's not personal and just trying to be there for other people and with what they're going through as well, I think, without trying to take it personal, is huge.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like a double-edged sword, right? Like emotions can really get you ahead. Being emotionally intelligent and playing off the emotions of other people's and using your emotions to win the trust and rapport of other people can be great. But at the same time, emotions can also get you in trouble if you let them take control of you. But I think the thought is we have the ability to control our emotions and to use our emotions to influence other people. But as soon as we lose control of our emotion, it floods our mind. It makes us be irrational. And it's just that's why it's so important to read those books by Daniel Goleman, because it teaches you how to gain control of your emotions in your mind. And once you understand how your mind works, it's like the world is your playground.
Now, Eric, with the restaurant industry, there's a lot of moving parts to it, and there's also some unsettling change that could come. Have you talked to some of your guests about some of the changes that they think may be coming and how to get in front of those in order to maintain a successful restaurant? So
I want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that if you're only providing food and you're not providing an experience, like you'll be kind of blown away by what's coming? Is that what you're saying?
You got it.
Well, I hope so. I hope that if you're only providing food, you do get blown away, because this industry is so much more than just food. It's about people. It's about making an impact in your community. It's about service. I mean, the word hospitality means generosity, warmth, caring. And food, in my opinion, isn't something that should be, it's not a commodity. It's life. And that's what we've gotten away from that. We forgot what food is. We look at food and we see numbers. Food is life, literally. Everything that we eat was once living, unless it's salt, right? And it sustains our own life. So what we put into our body will directly influence how we feel and how we react with the world. So I hope that people treat the experience intimately, and that they create experiences. And as far as things going away, I don't think I think the restaurant industry is going to be the anchor to humanity, really, just because it's so closely tied to who we are. There's a great book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Mankind or Humankind, and it gets into detail on like how we got to where we are today, basically, like real detail. And they talk about how we as humans are meant to operate on a small scale. And only recently, in the past 2 centuries, we've gone away from that small scale way of living, right? We're tribal animals. We literally evolved to live in tribes. If you were to take a mother and a father and their child and put them in the wild alone, they wouldn't survive. They need a tribe. And we're so closely tied to that tribal instinctual, just being around other people and connecting with people, that I feel like we'll always long for it. We can only handle 150 relationships at a time, right? So I feel like we're gonna stay close. I think we're starting to finally wake up and realize that we got too far away from how things were, and that we need that social, that emotional, that communal place to go, to be a part, to belong, to be loved. And you can't get that from the internet. You can't get that from big companies. It's too transactional, and we can sense that transactional relationship. We need transformative relationships. We need impactful relationships, and that's a part of who we are. That's a part of what humanity is. So we can't survive without it. And I think we're slowly starting to realize the effects of being too big. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Along the same lines, Eric, like earlier in the episode, you talked about how at first you started your podcast episodes, you were really focused on, what was the restaurant about, what made the restaurant successful. And since you've kind of evolved into really trying to dive into the individual, what is it about them that makes them tick, that makes them successful? I'm curious to know, really, maybe aside from that, how has your understanding of the restaurant industry evolved since episode 1?
It's all about people. At the end of the day, the most successful restaurateurs, what they are good at is providing opportunity. It's all about service to others. If you figure that out, if you realize that your life is all about service to others, going back to that whole tribal thing, like we live to serve each other. We find our role, and we serve that role. And when you realize that if you make your job taking care of everyone else, it will come back around to serve you some way, somehow. Like that's when things really start to take off. So as far as the people I've noticed and what they do and what they know to be true, it's all about just mentoring, caring, and transforming those who come underneath them in like their restaurant's umbrella and providing opportunity for them, caring for them, loving them. And when they get to the point where they've reached the ceiling with what their growth, their career or their personal growth and their career growth, with that restaurant, the most successful restaurateurs will say, hey, you clearly got what it takes to be successful in this industry. You're going to go open your own restaurant someday. What do you want to do? Let me invest in you. Like, let me provide opportunity to you. And the best restaurant groups, that's all they do. They grow laterally by providing opportunity to those who come into their funnel, like their I don't know, their group, I don't know what you want to call it. But their tribe, a restaurant group is a tribe, and it's just about taking care of and nurturing other people and just helping them reach self-actualization.
Now, Eric, you talk to a lot of your guests about leadership, or there are a lot of guests over the 392 where you've talked about leadership. Give us something in relation to leadership so that people can understand what does it take to become a very strong leader, to lead individuals, to inspire them.
Here's the thing, nobody will work harder for your restaurant than you're willing to work. So if you want people to work hard for you, you need to bust your ass and work hard for them. And you need to, it's such an overplayed statement, leading by example, but you've got to lead by example. There's other ways to say it. Lead by pouring water is what Ari Weinzweig calls it. And that means he's not too, going out to the tables and pouring water for guests isn't above him. Like he'll walk the floor and it's just setting the example. You've got to live your culture, your values. So people, they'll make their mission statement. They'll make their vision. They'll set a vision. They'll have all these values, but are you living them every day? Are they literally like your I don't know, your guide to how to live every day? And those values, those visions, those missions have to be your guiding, like they guide you every day, and you have to live them. And you can't expect anybody else to live them as harder than you're going to live them. So every day wake up and just live with purpose, live with intention, and serve other people. And when you live to serve, then other people will follow suit.
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of last time I was on your podcast, Eric. You brought up a success quote from Jeff Goins, which is he says, "I used to think that your calling was about doing something good in this world. Now I understand it's about being someone good and letting that goodness impact the world."
Yeah,
kind of on the same lines.
Yeah, and that reminds me of somebody who was recently on the show. I think it was Kirk Kellaway of 11 Madison Park. I believe it was him that said this. And don't be a what, be a who. Or maybe it was Mark Canlis. Oh, shoot, it was Mark Canlis from Canlis Restaurants. You might have heard of that little restaurant right there. It's a great restaurant. They've been around from like 1910 or something like that. But it's extremely successful restaurant family, and that's what he said. Like don't be a what, be a who. Focus on being who. And I think we get caught up focusing on the what's and not the intangible who values and stuff like that.
So, Eric, you've created this incredibly successful podcast. A lot of our listeners are industry professionals. One of our goals is to shed light on the business, and part of it is that's the entrepreneurial side of it. What advice would you have for someone that's looking to step up and start their own thing? Maybe it's a podcast or a blog or even a product or food truck. What you got?
It's so important from day one, just to have a mission, to have a direction, a destination, and you don't need to have it be fine-tuned from the very beginning, but you need something to move you in a direction. And a lot of people, they don't. The end product, whatever it is that they want to create, is unclear, but you just got to start. Just start, and you'll get more clarity as you go. And as long as you have a general direction you're moving in, it's going to get, like say if you're using a compass and you're lost and you need to go west to get to whatever road, just start walking west. And once you get out there, you'll start recognizing, you might see a river, and it's kind of like the compass is going to start honing in, right? And eventually you'll be on a degree, and you'll be following that one direction, that 1 degree. But you got to start moving in that direction. And over time, like you will hone in, like you will get more precise about where you're going and what you want to do. But just start and have a general direction, a general concept of what you want to do. And that's what I did with Restaurant Unstoppable. I didn't know I still don't know what's going to happen, but every day you improve, you fine tune, you hone in, you get a little bit more direct in where you're going. But I just started by going west. I just turned and picked a direction to start. So just start. Absolutely.
Well, Eric, sage words, sage advice, my friend. Any final thoughts for the listeners? Plus, why don't you give everybody your social media handles where they can find you?
Final thoughts. Yeah. Just live to serve. And I think if everybody lived to give and to serve others and to make this world better than when they came into it, the world would be a lot better place. So live to serve. And if you want to follow the podcast and me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter, Eric Cacciatore. That's ERIC, Eric with a C. Last name is CACCIATORE, like the chicken. And the Facebook is /Restaurant Unstoppable.
I'll never forget, we were talking with Seth Godin, and he gave you hell for not incorporating Cacciatore into.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man, that was a cool time.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, buddy.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It was an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric.
Cheers.
So that was our conversation with Eric Cacciatore. Sean, that was a lot of fun. I had a blast catching up with him. What did you take away from the conversation?
I think for me, Eric's ability to focus on one thing, to stick to a mission, and just keep the course is truly second to none. I remember talking to him months and months and months ago about his story on how he started and the evolution, because I was just getting started with Entrepreneurial Chef, so I was drawing inspiration. And just he stayed true to the mission to this day, and he stayed focused to this day. And he just keeps showing up. And that's one thing that he said early on when I was asking him advice. He said, Sean, just keep showing up every day, keep showing up every day. So it's very inspiring to see someone go after something with just such tenacity and stick with it, and then start getting those results and becoming truly, he is the #1 restaurant podcast that's out there right now. So I think that's very inspirational. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, for sure. It's been fun to see his progression, and I kind of feel like he and I were kind of on parallel paths. We were both trying to kind of make it work. We both kind of came from different backgrounds, and then went into the restaurant industry full time. For me, I think it was just fun to hear how his understanding of the industry has evolved. I think it kind of does for all of us as we mature and grow. And at first he kind of just thought it was about the product or the restaurant itself, and then over time he realized it was really just about the people, and that's always been close to my heart. And I appreciate hearing that new understanding from him. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a blast, Sean. And Eric, he already left his social media handles, his website, and everything like that in the episode, but we'll include those in the show notes as well. And Sean, you got to have some sort of quote from Eric, right, buddy?
Yes, I do. His famous one. He told this to me early on, too. There ain't nothing to it but to do it.
Love it. And with that, we're signing off.